There are a lot of opportunities out there, and you can see just from the online activity. I think there will be a number of exciting roles that do pop up.
Welcome back to Infrastructure Connections, the podcast where we explore what makes sustainable infrastructure work. Brought to you by the Infrastructure Sustainability Council, I'm your host, Seth Scott, and today we'll be speaking with Richard Evans. Richard is the founder and CEO of Talent Nation, Australia's leading sustainability, ESG, environment, sustainable finance, climate, and energy recruiting agency. The company is a B Corp and 100% employee-owned. He serves part-time on the membership advisory group of the UN Global Compact Network Australia, and he has a background in management consulting and banking. He joins us from Melbourne. Hello, Richard. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Seth. Great to be here.
So you've been doing this quite a long time now.
I had 1998 was when I first stepped into the recruitment space. So 28 years with a bit of study in between. And then specifically within the impact space since 2009. So clocking up 17 years in this space now.
What are some of the big differences between when you started and now?
So I guess if I look at where we were 17 years ago, carbon was starting to be talked about. Sustainability was a nice to have. Often it was, it involved things like your volunteering program or corporate giving, or it was definitely a cost to the business. And seeing that was something that built goodwill within employees predominantly, but then evolved into customers. And then that shift has continued to move where, Larry Fink from BlackRock came out and said, you need to start integrating climate into your decision making, and then the investors got involved. And as soon as the investors got involved, then boards got really interested in it, executives got really interested in it. So it's kind of shifted from that bottom-up approach to top-down, and so it became this almost perfect storm where it was getting pushed from below and above, and then you had customers coming in and greater transparency. So, and I guess from that, if you look at the professionals within the space, a lot more pragmatic and understand how sustainability needs to integrate into the business strategy. It can't sit off to the side. So the profession has evolved and grown up a lot, and is still at the point where it continues to evolve rapidly.
I understand you have your annual Sector Insights report coming out at the end of the month. Tell us about that.
The main focus of it, and the thing that everyone's always interested in, is how much do I get paid, and how does that compare with the rest of the market. We've broadened it out over the last couple of years, which is where we can touch on elements such as burnout. What are the things that the softer elements that people are interested in? So what are organisations doing to keep their staff? To access a copy of the report, we request a donation to our charity partner One Girl to help provide solar lights for scholars in Sierra Leone.
Something like 60% of sustainability professionals are happy with their work.
Yeah, which is great, because you should be. I think it's a really rewarding sector, and it's full of really nice people.
We're busy saving the world.
That's right.
We're the heroes.
Right. Yeah,
that's good. It's good when you're the protagonist.
Yeah, that's right.
So the report mentioned that accreditation is a plus for professionals, and you've been working with us at the ISC for a while. How has ISAP training and IS resources helped job seekers?
I think it's all about the credibility and how do you demonstrate the skills and experience you have, often in an environment where the hiring manager or the recruiter doesn't actually understand fully what you do. So I've always been a big fan of accreditations and independent assessment of people's capability or organisations' capability. So it's something that I look at and go, great, that's a qualification or an accreditation that you have that people go, right, I know what this means, or I know that you can't just get this label and put it on your CV. You need to go through a process. Anyone that's gone through the ICF accreditation process knows how involved it is. And so those qualifications are really critical. That will get you your next role because the organisation will go, that this is a challenge for us.
So I know the last couple of years are kind of tough for the industry. It looks like sustainability salaries have remained relatively flat over the last few years and continued to in the last year in this report. Where do you see that going, or what do you think is driving that trend even as inflation goes up?
Yeah, I guess if you put it in that perspective, then net salaries would have drawn back a bit. The main driver for them being relatively static is we did have a period of accelerated growth, so salaries were jumping significantly. So they have leveled off. Yeah, and I think it is a symptom of the skills shortage in the space and people being progressed through into more senior roles more quickly.
Yeah, that was my next question. Setting aside wages, do you see that career advancement is a positive in the sustainability industry where they're moving up rather quickly?
There's no shortage of growth potential in the space. It is an area that is evolving so rapidly that there is never a dull moment. Like you're constantly having to come up to speed. We're seeing people being exposed to board and executive far earlier in their career than they would have normally. If you're early to mid-career, there's lots of opportunity for advancement. If you are in a head of role or more of a strategic role, there are less opportunities out there at the moment.
What do you see in New Zealand, or especially Australia, as far as what the market's looking for, and do you see it picking up in general?
Yeah, so I guess if you look at the broader employment market, it has been on a downward trajectory for the last almost 2 years, kind of January 23. Sustainability was reasonably immune from that because teams have been lean and there have been these obligations and commitments, fear of greenwashing, so making sure that they're not exposed. We definitely saw things slow middle of last year, so middle to back end of last year. And then we've noticed an uptick as recent as December last year. So December through to now, there's a lot more activity, again, being driven by ASRS and mandatory disclosures. The last 18 months, the majority of roles have been analytics and data focused rather than leadership roles. But then we're also seeing other more interesting roles pop up as well, where an organisation feels like they've got climate disclosures under control and they're now thinking about, well, what does next year look like? Because yes, we've got disclosures and we've got that covered, but this isn't going away. So how do we evolve? We're going to need to bring our suppliers into the mix, and they're a small entity. They've got no idea how to approach that. So how do we support them and educate them and start to build programs? Because ultimately, that's going to help us down the track.
You mentioned that there's more disclosures coming down the pipe, and we just seem to see more and more. Now we're incorporating the financial disclosures, the CSRD, SEC rules, ISSB, TNFD. And then on top of that, we've got organizations interested in circularity and planetary pricing. And
yeah. I think what we need more acronyms. Like that's really what's missing from the sector. More acronyms. We're not just going for the 3-letter acronyms. We've now got 4-letter, and we're really owning that space.
How does that affect sustainability professionals? Are they going to become more specialized, or are they going to get stuck in roles where they do just the reporting they have to do, and that's where they are most valuable to the company?
That's an interesting question from a timing perspective. We've always seen that the holy grail for sustainability practitioners was like the chief sustainability officer. So wanting to get onto the executive in that sustainability role. And what we've seen is that there have been some CSO appointments, but the majority of CSOs in Australia are in blended roles. So they might come from a corporate affairs or risk or strategy background. So they're an executive first and foremost rather than sustainability. From a role perspective at the moment, disclosures are dominating the conversation. So we are definitely in that compliance phase at the moment. Over the last 18 months, we've seen organisations that have been in leadership positions have hit pause in terms of their ambitions, and now they're waiting for the laggards to catch up. And I think that sums it up really well in terms of where we're at in the market. Then you're going to find it very challenging.
Sustainability managers seem to have this ability to look beyond the reporting that they're doing, and they're very in touch with what's coming down the pipe so that they can see into the future, some distance, 5 years into the future. And then on top of that, they've got a platform level view of what's happening in the organization because they're tapped into all that data. I feel like that's an untapped resource that organizations tend to underappreciate.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think there is an ability to go, okay, well, what do we need to focus on? And organizations are getting a lot better at that in terms of going, okay, well, there's more disclosures happening. Yes, the focus is now, but we have got this awareness that we're going to need to think about, well, what's next? And often that comes down to the maturity of the organization to be able to unlock that capability within their sustainability team. The practitioners that are able to plug into the market, definitely. Futurist isn't the word, but I'm sure they can see the trends coming.
Yeah, maybe risk manager is a better word.
Yeah, but it's a risk for the organization.
I guess that's one of the pluses and minuses about the sustainability profession is that we all wear so many hats that we're very useful to an organization in multiple places, but that at the same time we can get stretched thin that way, especially when we're not being paid very much to begin with.
It's a lot better than it was. So
yeah.
And I think that's the thing. It's you don't move into this space for the money, and that's always a factor. We look at you only need to look at the healthcare profession, so nurses and paramedics and essential services, and they're not doing those roles for the money. They're doing it for the impact that they have on society. So sustainability professionals are certainly not in that category, and we've seen salaries move significantly in previous years, not so much in recent times, but I think that's largely because there's more people being promoted into more senior roles more quickly. So the salaries have kind of maintained, but the years of experience have dropped for those levels. So for us, when we look at scoping roles, we're now starting to think that we need to rework or realign the position descriptions, because what we call a sustainability manager now, 5 years ago, would have been a senior advisor. It's just the role titles have increased, and certainly the accountabilities have increased, but in terms of the years of experience, they're probably sitting more at that senior advisor level, whereas now they're a manager and they've got a lot more pressure on them to deliver.
We're seeing a lot more burnout now, and that's unfortunately a kind of a symptom of the fact that people care so much about their work and that they're willing to say yes to everything. What are organizations doing to kind of curb that amount of burnout, or to help individuals work through it or help them work through it as an industry overall?
So I've seen individuals that have reached burnout and they've left their role, but then they've stepped into a new organisation and they've been able to redefine the parameters around what they're doing, so they don't have the expectations that they previously had, and a lot of them were self-imposed as well. So I have seen some individuals that have stepped in and they've been really clear and gone, okay, here's the scope of work that you want me to deliver. There's only a certain amount of hours in the year, so I can deliver this. So if you're happy for me to park that, that's fine. If not, then I need resources to do that. And then it then becomes a conversation around how you fund that or how you resource that.
And your report said that 37% of the organizations you surveyed says they have sustainability KPIs for their executives. What was that? What kind of KPIs do they have, and how did that come about?
Where I've seen it done really well when people have not come from a sustainability background but have moved into these executive roles is that they're not trying to be the expert. Like they recognise where their strengths are, and they hire really well. So they hire someone in to be the head of sustainability. They bring them along to all the board meet, and they're not trying to take credit for any of the work that's been done. They're quite happy to devolve responsibility to the individual, but they know that their role is to help smooth things at the executive level, at the board level, but also give them exposure and help them with their progression into that role, and that then aligning with the executive and then the board as well for them to sign that off.
That's good. Well, I want to wrap up, but I just want to ask you, where do you think this is going in the next year? What's next for the industry?
There are a lot of opportunities out there, and you can see just from the online activity from job ads and LinkedIn, and so there hasn't been a lot of movement over the last 18 months. That is starting to free up now, and I think there will be a number of exciting roles that do pop up. But I think for the next 9 to 12 months, you need to be comfortable that it will be about reducing the risk for the organisation and giving a level of comfort that they're not going to end up in ASIC's firing line.
Yeah, that's good. Well, that sounds like good news overall.
I think it's good news overall. It's not, yes, we want to be working on these elements, but I think it's going to provide a really solid platform.
That's great. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, Richard. It's good having you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I'm a huge fan of the Infrastructure Sustainability Council, so real pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Seth.
Thank you for listening to Infrastructure Connections. Please take a moment to follow us wherever you get your podcasts, and we want to hear your feedback. Leave a message down below to let us know your thoughts, or drop us a line at Infrastructure Sustainability Council. Stay tuned for another episode of Infrastructure Connections.